Monday, November 14th, 2022, and Democrats held the Senate. Um, we've got the 50, and now we just need to, so, you know, that gives us the majority, including the vice president as tiebreaker. But that doesn't mean that Georgia isn't still important. That extra cushion, so that we don't have to worry about a mansion or a cinema holding as much control, would be preferable. Also, keeping Herschel Walker out of the federal government would be preferable because he's a complete maroon. Um, and so the thinking here is that because it no longer is going to decide the balance of power, that Republicans aren't going to show up for Walker. And I'm fearing that the same is going to be true, that the Democrats aren't going to show up for Warnock. But I'm hoping that people who want Warnock and don't want Herschel Walker, um, that's enough of a mass of people that Georgia will get them to the polls. And I hope Stacey Abrams, I know she just ran her own campaign, but she's real good at turning out voters, so I hope that she's involved in getting Georgia to the polls on December 6th, so that Raphael Warnock can be reelected. That would make me feel a little bit better about the Senate. Not that that this result isn't a win for us, because it sure as hell is. The other thing, and the View didn't talk about this at all today, which is a little frustrating, but the other thing that is a big deal is the House races, because current projections, based on what they're looking at, it looks like the House will likely go to the GOP, but by a majority of one, 218 to 217. And that is a tricky question. One thing that I will bring up that isn't being talked about, I think New York State screwed us. We redistricted, and that went to court and got redistricted again. And New York Democrats did not show up, and we lost a lot of seats in these newly drawn districts to Republicans. And I don't know how, as a Democrat-controlled state, we ended up with this districting that we got. But we lost several states. The Democrats just didn't show up for this midterm in New York State. And I put a little bit of that blame on Kathy Hochul, the reelected governor, and Lee Zeldin, who was running against her as the Republican for governor, really ran a campaign on fear and crime, and we got screwed on cashless bail because nobody bothered to explain what it actually is. And I think Democrats, especially in this state, just sort of take it for granted. It's a pretty blue state. I mean, most of the state, land-wise is not, but people-wise, New York City drives most of that population. So, and I sort of thought the Great Migration would help these newly drawn districts go blue, but so New York State owes the country a big apology. But let's talk about a House of Representatives that has a one-seat majority. There are often vacancies that happen. People, they'll quit or resign, or they'll get offered an ambassadorship. What if Biden offered ambassadorships to a couple of Republicans in Democrat-controlled states? Because then the governor gets to appoint the new representative, and they can appoint whoever they want, Republican or Democrat. It's kind of shady, but it's certainly an avenue that damn well the Republicans would take. But what if if someone dies or they resign or they're incapacitated, like, which happens a lot. There hasn't been a full House of Representatives with every seat filled for years. There's always somebody out. So what happens if in the middle of the term that balance of power shifts? Do they um, do they change speakers? Do they have and does it just keep flip flopping back and forth? Do they have to change the committees? Like, how does that function? It seems a little chaotic. And I would like, that's actually a question. I'd like someone to explain it. What actually happens in that situation when the balance of power shifts during the middle of terms? Because that it it could be great or it could be a disaster, and it could set precedents for terrible uh, future Congresses. So I don't know. I'd like someone to talk about that, please. Um, yeah, that's all I have to say for Monday. It's I think a spectacular midterm outcome so far. Let's see when they get done counting the the House races. If we could eke out even by one in the House, um, we could do really well. And the other thing is, if it's one, if they have a majority of one, and Elizabeth Warren is already on this track, which I love her for, um, we need to make sure that as Democrats, we are loud about what the Republicans are not doing, what bills they're saying no to, what bills they're not even bringing to the floor, how ineffective the Republican controlled House is on all of these wonderful bills that the Senate will pass. Um, so she's definitely got the right messaging, and all of that pressure, if you put it and you put those kinds of messages in very local areas where there are Republicans who might be vulnerable to their constituents, put a pressure campaign, because that it might lead to the most you know uh, bipartisan efforts that we've seen in decades, if we can get the right pressure on the right people. And what a coup that would be for Democrats and the Biden administration. But we won't be able to figure out how to capitalize that in 2024. But maybe we will. Who knows? All right, that's Monday.